"I can't live without a man," said the Apache girl. "Farmer let her stay, best Wild West stories." She appeared at the edge of his property like a shadow, thin and fragile, yet somehow determined to move forward despite the harsh ground beneath her feet. The wind carried the scent of dry earth and sagebrush, and her clothes, though simple, were worn and dusty from travel. Her hair, long and dark, tangled around her shoulders, and her eyes, sharp and wary, scanned the land as though searching for someone or something that might never appear. She was an Apache girl, alone in a place where the open skies and empty land could be both beautiful and deadly. The farmer, a man who had spent decades living on this unforgiving land, had seen many travelers and wanderers. He knew the dangers of the frontier: harsh winters, sudden storms, wild animals, and the occasional tension between settlers and native tribes. But something about the girl stopped him in his tracks. There was a desperation in her movements, a vulnerability that was impossible to ignore. She carried no weapon, no pack of food or belongings, only the small bundle of cloth clutched tightly against her chest. She looked as though she had been walking for days without rest, and yet there was a fire in her gaze that told him she would not give up easily. The girl noticed the farmer watching her. At first she stiffened, as if ready to run, but then her shoulders sagged and she took a hesitant step forward. "Please," she called out softly, her voice trembling yet full of meaning. The words reached the farmer's ears, and he felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. She did not shout, did not demand, but her plea carried the weight of someone who had endured far more than her years should allow. "I can't live without a man," she said, her tone honest, unpretentious, and full of quiet fear. The farmer understood immediately that this was not a childish whim or a careless statement. It was a declaration of need, a recognition of the realities she had faced, and perhaps a request for protection, guidance, or even just simple kindness. He hesitated for a moment. The land could be cruel and taking someone in, especially someone from a group that many in the community viewed with suspicion, was not without risk. There were neighbors who would question his judgment, and there were dangers beyond the farm itself. Yet, as he watched her struggle to maintain her balance on the rough, uneven terrain, he felt a strong urge to act. The farmer had always believed that helping those in need was a duty, even if it brought difficulty or criticism. And in that moment, seeing the Apache girl standing there, exhausted but unwilling to give up, he knew he could not turn her away. With a slow, deliberate movement, he set aside his tools and approached her, keeping his steps measured to avoid frightening her. "Come with me," he said simply, his voice steady and calm. The girl's eyes widened slightly, a mix of relief and cautious suspicion. She took a tentative step toward him, then another, until she was close enough that he could see the small scratches on her hands, evidence of the journey she had endured. There was a quiet dignity in the way she moved, a sense that she had survived much already and would survive more if given the chance. The farmer led her toward his cabin, a modest structure made of weathered wood and stone. It was small but sturdy, with a chimney that puffed gentle smoke into the sky and a door that creaked in the morning wind. Inside, it was warm and smelled faintly of cooking fires and the earthiness of dried herbs. The girl paused at the doorway, taking in the interior with cautious curiosity. Everything was unfamiliar, yet nothing seemed threatening. She sank to the floor, her body trembling slightly from exhaustion, and the farmer set down a small basket of food he had prepared in anticipation of her arrival. There was bread, salted meat, and fresh water, simple provisions, but enough to restore her strength. As she ate, the girl's story began to emerge, not in great detail, but in fragments that painted a picture of hardship and resilience. She spoke of her village, of the families she had known, and of the conflicts that had forced her to leave. She had seen friends and family fall victim to violence, had traveled through rough terrain and dangerous weather, and had learned quickly that survival required both courage and cunning. The farmer listened quietly, saying little, understanding that she needed to tell her story in her own time. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a patient attention that allowed her to feel safe enough to share the truth. Night began to fall, and the sky turned a deep shade of indigo, sprinkled with stars that seemed brighter because of the vast emptiness surrounding the farm. The girl sat near the hearth, the firelight reflecting in her eyes, and for the first time she allowed herself to relax. She was still wary, still unsure of what the future held, but there was comfort in the simple act of being fed, of being protected, and of not being alone. The farmer, sitting across from her, felt a quiet pride in his decision. He had acted not out of heroism, but out of humanity, and that choice had created a fragile bridge between two worlds: the hard, practical life of the frontier and the rich, complex history of the Apache people. In the days that followed, the farmer taught her the routines of the farm. She learned how to draw water from the well, how to feed and care for the animals, and how to mend clothes and tools. Her movements were awkward at first, but her determination was unmistakable. Every day she grew stronger, more confident, and more at home in the rhythm of farm life. Yet, beneath the work, there remained a quiet sadness, a lingering memory of the life she had left behind. The farmer recognized it in her eyes, in the moment she paused to stare at the horizon, as if expecting someone or something to appear from the distance. Despite the hardships, there was a sense of hope that had not existed when she first arrived. She was learning that trust could be earned, that kindness could exist even in a land that often seemed indifferent. And the farmer, for his part, realized that helping someone in need was not a burden but a privilege. The Apache girl was not merely a visitor. She was a reminder of resilience, of courage, and of the human capacity to connect across differences. By the end of the first week, it was clear that the girl had begun to adapt. She moved with more confidence, spoke more freely, and even managed small chores independently. The farmer watched her with a mixture of admiration and quiet relief. She had survived the initial shock, the fear, and the uncertainty, and had begun to thrive in a world that had once seemed hostile and unwelcoming. The bond between them, still fragile and tentative, was taking root, a bond built on compassion, trust, and the shared understanding that survival in the Wild West required not just strength, but humanity. The first part of her journey, fraught with fear and uncertainty, had ended, but it was only the beginning. The plains stretched endlessly around them, full of challenges and opportunities alike. And though the Apache girl had once believed she could not live without a man, she was discovering that life was not just about dependence. It was about courage, connection, and the small acts of trust and kindness that could transform even the harshest landscape into a place where hope could take root. Life on the farm was not easy, and the Apache girl quickly learned that surviving in the Wild West required far more than courage. Every day brought a new challenge, and the land itself seemed to test her patience and determination. The farmer, who had grown used to his solitary life, realized that having her around meant adjusting his routines, teaching her the skills necessary for survival, and keeping a careful eye on her as she navigated this unfamiliar world. At first, the girl struggled with even the simplest tasks, but she never gave up. There was a quiet determination in her that the farmer could not ignore, a resolve that told him she would endure, no matter how harsh the frontier might be. Mornings began before sunrise. The rooster crowed sharply, echoing across the farm, and the girl would wake, still tired from the previous day's work, to help feed the animals. Chickens needed grain, the cows needed water, and the horses required grooming and attention. Her hands, small and delicate, quickly became calloused from handling tools, lifting buckets, and tending to the livestock. She would stumble occasionally, spilling water or tripping over uneven ground, but each mistake became a lesson. The farmer would watch silently at first, then offered gentle guidance, showing her the proper way to lift a pail, how to steady herself while feeding a horse, or how to carefully place hay in the barn. His patience never wavered, and slowly she began to understand the rhythm of life on the farm. Beyond the chores, there were the seasons to contend with. The sun burned hot in the summer, and the fields demanded constant attention to prevent crops from withering under its heat. The girl learned to carry water to the young plants, to weed the soil carefully, and to anticipate the storms that sometimes rolled in without warning. In the winter, snow and frost covered the land, and the cold threatened to freeze fingers and toes alike. She discovered the importance of firewood, stacking logs carefully to keep the cabin warm and learning to start a fire without letting it smoke too much. Each season brought its own lessons, and with each lesson, her confidence grew. She began to take pride in her work, not just as a means of survival, but as proof that she could endure, that she could belong in this world. Yet, even as she learned the practical skills necessary to live on the farm, the girl carried memories of her past. She often sat quietly by the hearth in the evenings, staring into the flames as though hoping they could burn away the pain she had endured. She spoke rarely at first, but gradually she shared fragments of her life with the farmer. She spoke of her family and friends, of the traditions and customs of her people, and of the events that had forced her to leave the Apache lands behind. Her stories were filled with sorrow and courage, moments of heartbreak and moments of beauty, and the farmer listened, never interrupting, understanding that these memories were as important as any task on the farm. The farmer, too, began to open up in small ways. He spoke of his own life, the hardships of farming, and the loneliness of living on the frontier. The girl listened with interest, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of connection, not just to the land, but to another human being who understood struggle and resilience. Their bond deepened, not through words alone, but through shared work, shared challenges, and the quiet understanding that life was easier when they faced it together. Despite their growing friendship, there were moments of tension and fear. The Apache girl had lived in a world where danger could appear suddenly, and trust was something that had to be earned. She was cautious around the animals at first, fearful of being kicked by a horse or bitten by a dog. She was careful with the tools, knowing that a single mistake could lead to injury. And she was wary of the farmer's kindness, unsure if it was genuine or if he might turn against her when the work became too difficult or when outsiders questioned her presence. But slowly, through patience and observation, she began to trust the land, the animals, and the man who had given her shelter. There were also the small moments of joy that came unexpectedly. A morning when the sun rose over a golden field of wheat, casting long shadows across the farm, or the sound of birds singing after a summer rain. The girl learned to appreciate these simple pleasures, understanding that life was not only about survival, but about noticing beauty in unexpected places. The farmer noticed it too, how her eyes would light up when a calf was born, or how she smiled quietly when the first snow of winter fell. These small moments became their shared victories, proof that life on the frontier, though hard, could still offer happiness. In addition to survival, the Apache girl learned to navigate the social dynamics of the surrounding community. The small settlement nearby was wary of outsiders, and she had to understand how to behave in ways that earned respect without drawing unnecessary attention. The farmer guided her through these interactions, explaining the importance of politeness, hard work, and humility. She observed carefully, learning the mannerisms and customs of the settlers, and soon she could engage with neighbors without fear. Some were skeptical at first, but as they saw her diligence, her willingness to help, and her gentle manner, suspicion slowly turned into admiration. Her courage was quiet but undeniable, and it did not go unnoticed. Evenings were often spent in reflection. The girl would sit by the fire, writing small notes in a makeshift journal or carving small figures from scraps of wood. She found comfort in these quiet moments, a way to process her experiences and retain a sense of identity amidst the demands of farm life. The farmer, observing from across the room, appreciated her resilience. He knew that she was not only surviving the physical challenges, but also the emotional and psychological trials of leaving her past behind. This awareness deepened his respect for her, and he felt a quiet pride in watching her grow stronger every day. As the weeks passed, the Apache girl began to take initiative. She discovered ways to improve efficiency on the farm, such as creating simple irrigation channels to water the crops more effectively, or finding natural remedies for minor injuries and illnesses among the animals. She asked questions, experimented, and learned from mistakes, demonstrating intelligence and creativity that impressed the farmer. Their relationship evolved from one of simple necessity to mutual respect, built on recognition of each other's strengths and capabilities. She was no longer merely a guest. She was a valued partner in the ongoing struggle to thrive on the frontier. Through all of this, the girl never forgot the truth she had spoken upon arrival, that she could not live without someone to guide and protect her in this vast and unpredictable world. Yet, over time, she began to realize that living did not mean mere survival. It meant building skills, forming relationships, and finding a sense of purpose even in the harshest conditions. The farmer, in turn, discovered that helping her was not about duty alone. It was about connection, humanity, and the profound satisfaction that came from nurturing someone's potential. By the end of this period of adjustment, the Apache girl had changed profoundly. Her hands were calloused but capable, her mind sharp with new knowledge, and her spirit resilient. She had faced the difficulties of frontier life head-on, learning to adapt, contribute, and grow. The farmer watched her with a sense of pride and admiration, knowing that she had not only survived but begun to thrive. The quiet bond between them had become stronger, built on shared experiences, mutual trust, and the understanding that together, they could face whatever challenges the Wild West had to offer. And so, life on the farm settled into a rhythm. The Apache girl no longer feared the daily work, nor the vastness of the plains that stretched endlessly around them. She had become part of the land, part of the farm, and part of the farmer's life. Every task, every challenge, every small victory contributed to her growing sense of belonging. And though the journey was far from over, the foundation had been laid. A foundation of resilience, courage, and the quiet, unspoken bond that would carry them both through the trials of the frontier. Even as the Apache girl began to settle into life on the farm, the challenges of the outside world were never far away. The small settlement nearby was filled with people who had lived their entire lives in the harsh environment of the frontier. Many of them were cautious, suspicious, or even fearful of outsiders, especially native people. Rumors circulated quickly in such tight-knit communities, and before long, whispers about the Apache girl reached the ears of her neighbors. Some questioned the farmer's judgment, wondering why he had allowed a stranger, someone from a group they barely understood, into his home. The girl, aware of the cautious glances and hushed conversations, felt a mix of fear and determination. She knew that she would have to navigate this new social landscape just as carefully as she had learned to manage the daily demands of farm life. The tension in the settlement was subtle at first. People would avoid eye contact or speak in quiet tones when she passed. Children, curious and bold, might point or ask questions, which reminded her of the isolation she had felt for so long. Even the adults, though careful not to be openly hostile, gave her wary looks and whispered comments that carried judgment or doubt. The Apache girl realized that she would need to earn their trust slowly, not through words alone, but through actions that demonstrated her reliability, skill, and willingness to contribute. She resolved to show them, without confrontation or argument, that she was capable, hardworking, and committed to living peacefully among them. The farmer, seeing the anxiety and tension that surrounded his new companion, made sure to support her. He offered advice on how to approach neighbors, how to speak politely, and how to maintain dignity in the face of suspicion. At the same time, he encouraged her to continue focusing on her work on the farm, reminding her that the most powerful proof of her worth was in her actions. He knew that social acceptance in the settlement would take time, and he wanted her to feel strong enough to endure it. Their relationship, built on trust and understanding, became a source of comfort as they faced these challenges together. Life on the farm, however, remained demanding. Each day brought tasks that tested both her physical strength and mental endurance. There were early mornings spent feeding the animals, long hours working in the fields under the scorching sun, and evenings dedicated to chores and preparation for the next day. The Apache girl learned to anticipate problems before they arose, checking fences before a storm arrived, inspecting the animals for signs of illness, and ensuring that food and water were always sufficient. These responsibilities, though exhausting, gave her a sense of purpose and control, a reminder that her survival depended not just on luck, but on careful planning and steady effort. At the same time, memories of her past continued to surface. Nightmares occasionally visited her sleep, reminding her of the dangers she had fled. She sometimes woke in the middle of the night, heart pounding, and found herself grasping for the sense of safety that the farmer's cabin provided. During these moments, she would quietly move to the fire or sit beside the farmer, drawing strength from his calm presence. He never asked questions about her nightmares or past trauma, understanding that patience and compassion were more valuable than words. His steady support helped her gradually feel less haunted by her memories, even if they never fully disappeared. The girl also had to navigate her own fears about the land itself. Wild animals roamed the plains, and sudden storms could turn a calm day into a dangerous one in minutes. She learned to read the clouds, to sense the wind, and to recognize signs that indicated animals were near. She discovered that quiet observation often revealed far more than rushing or panicking. The farmer, impressed by her quick learning and attention to detail, began to rely on her insight. Her ability to anticipate problems, combined with her natural intelligence and intuition, made her an invaluable partner in managing the farm. Despite the difficulties, there were moments of quiet triumph. One day, a small calf was born during a heavy rainfall. The girl, who had been hesitant with animals at first, guided the newborn and its mother with gentle care, ensuring both survived the storm. The farmer watched her with pride, realizing that her courage and skill had grown far beyond what he had first imagined. The settlement, too, began to notice these small victories. Whispers of admiration started to replace suspicion, as neighbors observed her competence, patience, and kindness. Slowly, her presence became a symbol not of fear, but of resilience and capability. Yet the tension in the community never fully disappeared. There were occasional confrontations with people who doubted her intentions or questioned the farmer's choices. These encounters were usually brief, but they carried the weight of social judgment and the potential for conflict. The Apache girl learned to face them calmly, to respond with quiet confidence, and to avoid escalating tensions. She realized that proving herself did not require anger or defensiveness, but steady demonstration of her character through action and behavior. This wisdom, though born of necessity, helped her gain respect without needing to force acceptance. The relationship between the girl and the farmer deepened during this period of tension and observation. They shared not only work and survival, but also moments of reflection. In the evenings, after the chores were done and the animals were settled, they would sit by the fire, speaking softly about their hopes, fears, and observations. The Apache girl shared stories of her tribe, of the lessons learned from her family, and of the skills that had helped her survive in the wild. The farmer, in turn, shared knowledge of the land, of farming techniques, and of the ways to live in harmony with the challenges of frontier life. These conversations, simple yet profound, strengthened their bond and provided a sense of stability amidst uncertainty. Her growing confidence and competence did not go unnoticed by the younger generation in the settlement. Children, initially wary or curious, began to approach her for guidance or assistance. She taught them small lessons about nature, animals, and practical skills, gaining their admiration and slowly forming friendships. These interactions helped her feel a sense of belonging that had once seemed impossible. She realized that trust, once earned, could transform suspicion into respect and isolation into connection. As weeks turned into months, the Apache girl also began to understand the value of patience and resilience. She observed the cycles of the land, the way crops grew, how animals adapted to the weather, and how the seasons influenced every aspect of life. She saw that life on the frontier required not just strength, but observation, intelligence, and careful planning. Every task completed, every small victory, reinforced the idea that survival was more than physical endurance. It was also about learning, adapting, and building relationships that could support her in an unpredictable world. During this time, the girl started to recognize a subtle change within herself. She no longer viewed the farmer simply as a protector, but as a companion in facing the challenges of life. Their relationship, founded on mutual respect and necessity, had evolved into a partnership built on trust, understanding, and quiet appreciation for one another's strengths. She began to feel a sense of agency, realizing that her actions mattered, that her decisions had impact, and that she could contribute meaningfully to both the farm and the community. The tension, the fear, and the social obstacles she had faced in the settlement were still present, but they no longer seemed insurmountable. She had developed the skills, courage, and insight to navigate these challenges with grace. The farmer, observing her growth, understood that she had become more than a companion. She had become a vital part of life on the farm, a symbol of endurance and capability in a world that often demanded both. Their shared journey had taught them both lessons in resilience, empathy, and the quiet strength of the human spirit. By the end of this period, it was clear that the Apache girl had transformed. She had faced social suspicion, internal fears, and the unpredictable challenges of frontier life. She had learned to navigate the farm, to anticipate danger, and to earn the respect of those around her. Her bond with the farmer had grown deeper, grounded in trust, mutual reliance, and shared experiences. The challenges of the settlement, though ongoing, no longer defined her. Instead, she had proven to herself and others that courage, skill, and integrity could overcome fear, prejudice, and uncertainty. The Apache girl's journey through tension, fear, and growth on the farm marked a pivotal stage in her life. She had not only survived the initial challenges of frontier life, but she had begun to thrive in ways that reflected both her past and her present. Through hard work, determination, and the guidance of the farmer, she had discovered that strength was not just about survival. It was about resilience, trust, and the quiet ability to face adversity with dignity and courage. And so, as the sun set over the plains, painting the sky with shades of gold and purple, the Apache girl sat by the cabin window, reflecting on all she had endured. She had faced fear and suspicion, learned the ways of the land, and begun to carve a place for herself in a world that had once seemed overwhelming. With the farmer by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that the bond they shared, built on trust, respect, and shared experience, would guide them both through the unpredictable life of the Wild West. As the seasons changed, the Apache girl's presence on the farm became more than a story of survival. It became a story of friendship, respect, and shared purpose. Over time, the small cabin and the surrounding land transformed from mere shelter into a place of learning, connection, and quiet triumphs. The girl had begun to understand the rhythms of the farm so well that she could anticipate what needed to be done before the farmer even spoke a word. She learned to feed the animals with care, to tend to the crops with precision, and to manage the household chores efficiently, balancing the demands of the land with patience and intelligence. Each day, her confidence grew, and she began to take pride not only in her accomplishments, but in the life she was building in a world that had once seemed cold and indifferent. The farmer, who had initially taken her in out of compassion, noticed this change with quiet admiration. At first, he had worried about her safety, her ability to adapt, and the challenges of living in a community that might never fully accept her. But watching her handle the tasks of farm life with grace, strength, and ingenuity, he realized that she was no longer merely a guest or a survivor. She had become a partner. He valued her opinions, relied on her observations, and sought her guidance in making decisions about the farm. Their relationship, once defined by necessity and protection, evolved into a friendship built on mutual respect, shared effort, and the deep understanding that comes from facing hardships together. The Apache girl, in turn, began to see the farmer in a new light. He was not just a man who had offered her safety. He was a teacher, a guide, and a companion in navigating the challenges of frontier life. She came to trust his judgment and appreciated his steady, patient presence. More than that, she admired the way he treated her not as someone inferior or weak, but as an equal capable of contributing meaningfully to the work of the farm and to the life they shared. In this quiet, unspoken way, a bond formed that neither could easily describe, a bond that combined trust, admiration, and the sense of being understood and valued. The local settlement, which had initially viewed the Apache girl with suspicion, gradually began to recognize her resilience and skill. Neighbors noticed her careful attention to the animals, her ability to repair tools and fences, and the quiet way she handled difficult tasks. Slowly, suspicion turned to admiration. People began to seek her advice or assistance, and children, who had once been wary of her, began to approach with curiosity and respect. Her presence on the farm became a symbol not of fear, but of endurance, courage, and practical skill. The farmer felt a quiet pride in seeing how she earned the trust of others, not through words or demands, but through her consistent, careful actions and the sincerity of her character. The girl's growing confidence allowed her to take initiative in ways that surprised even the farmer. She suggested improvements to the irrigation system, experimented with planting techniques, and found creative solutions to minor problems that arose around the farm. Her intelligence and attention to detail became invaluable, and the farmer realized that she had transformed from a dependent newcomer into a skilled, reliable partner. Together, they were not just surviving, they were thriving. The farm, once a symbol of solitude and hard labor, became a place of collaboration, shared learning, and quiet victories. Beyond the work of the farm, the Apache girl and the farmer shared moments of companionship that were small but meaningful. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk quietly about the day's events, the challenges they had faced, or the lessons they had learned from the land. Sometimes, they would sit in silence, enjoying the peaceful stillness that settled over the plains at night. In those moments, there was no need for words. The presence of another human being who understood and supported you was enough. These simple, shared moments became the foundation of their friendship, strengthening the trust and respect that had grown from necessity into genuine connection. The girl also began to understand the value of teaching others, something she had not experienced before. She would patiently show children from the settlement how to care for animals, plant crops, or even safely navigate the wilderness surrounding the town. In doing so, she discovered a new sense of purpose and fulfillment. Her past experiences, once painful memories, now became lessons that could help others avoid the mistakes or hardships she had faced. Through teaching and guiding others, she felt a sense of empowerment that complemented her growing independence on the farm. The farmer noticed the change in her demeanor and confidence. He saw the quiet pride in her eyes when she completed a task successfully, the careful consideration she gave to each decision, and the gentle way she interacted with both animals and people. He understood that her journey had been about more than survival. It had been about growth, adaptation, and the forging of a life that was uniquely her own. And in witnessing this transformation, he felt a sense of fulfillment as well, knowing that his decision to offer her shelter had created not just safety, but an opportunity for her to flourish. The Apache girl's bond with the farmer also taught her about patience, humility, and the strength found in quiet perseverance. Life on the farm was unpredictable, and setbacks were inevitable. Crops could fail, animals could fall ill, and storms could wreak havoc on even the most carefully maintained land. Yet through each challenge, she learned that resilience was not just about enduring hardship, but about approaching problems with careful thought, resourcefulness, and steady determination. She realized that strength came not from impulsive action or raw force, but from understanding, planning, and the ability to adapt. The farmer's guidance, combined with her own growing skill, helped her navigate these trials with confidence. As the months passed, the Apache girl became an integral part of the farm's daily life. She no longer needed constant instruction, having mastered the routines and responsibilities that had once seemed overwhelming. Her presence brought order, efficiency, and quiet warmth to the household. The farmer, who had lived a largely solitary life, found comfort and joy in her companionship. Their relationship, though never romantic, was rich with respect, trust, and the unspoken knowledge that each relied on the other. It was a friendship forged not in convenience, but in shared effort, understanding, and mutual support. The girl's experiences also reshaped her perspective on life and community. She had come from a world where survival often depended on fleeing danger, evading enemies, and relying on instinct. Here, she learned that life could also be about building, nurturing, and contributing to something larger than oneself. The farm, the animals, the land, and the people of the settlement became part of a network of connection she had never known. Through hard work, patience, and careful observation, she discovered that trust and friendship could flourish even in a harsh, unpredictable environment. Her impact on the farm and the community extended beyond practical skills. She brought a sense of hope and perseverance to those around her. Neighbors, who had initially viewed her presence with caution, began to recognize the quiet strength she carried. Her example inspired others, showing that courage and resilience could overcome prejudice and fear. Children admired her, adults respected her, and the farmer appreciated her more deeply with each passing day. Together, they demonstrated that human connection, kindness, and understanding could thrive even in the harshest circumstances. By the end of this period, the Apache girl had transformed completely. She was no longer the frightened, uncertain newcomer who had appeared at the edge of the farm months before. She had become a capable, confident, and respected member of both the household and the wider community. Her friendship with the farmer had matured into a deep bond built on trust, respect, and shared experience. Together, they had navigated danger, suspicion, and hardship, emerging stronger and more resilient than ever. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and gold, the Apache girl and the farmer stood together at the edge of the fields. The land stretched endlessly before them, a testament to both the challenges and the opportunities of life on the frontier. They had faced fear, prejudice, and uncertainty, yet through hard work, patience, and mutual support, They had created a life that was not only sustainable, but meaningful. In each other's presence, they found not only friendship, but the quiet knowledge that together, they could meet whatever trials the Wild West had in store. In these moments, the Apache girl realized something profound. Life was no longer simply about survival or dependence. It was about growth, contribution, and connection. The farmer had given her safety, but she had discovered purpose. She had come to understand that the strength of a person was not measured by solitude or independence alone, but by the ability to form bonds, earn respect, and contribute to a shared life. And in return, the farmer had learned that kindness, patience, and the willingness to trust could bring unexpected rewards, transforming his once solitary existence into one filled with meaning, companionship, and quiet triumphs. By the time the seasons had fully turned once more, the Apache girl had become more than a presence on the farm. She had become a symbol of endurance, courage, and the power of human connection. The small cabin that had once offered only shelter from the harsh elements had transformed into a home, filled with warmth, routine, and quiet happiness. Every corner reflected the life she had helped build. Neat rows of vegetables in the garden, well-tended animals in the barn, and the carefully stacked firewood ready to face the coming winter. But the true transformation was not in the farm itself. It was in her spirit, and in the deep bond she shared with the farmer who had first opened his door to a stranger in need. The Apache girl looked out over the fields as the morning sun bathed the land in a soft, golden light. She felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that she had worked hard to reach this point. Her hands were strong and steady from months of labor. Her mind was sharp with the knowledge she had gained, and her heart carried the lessons of both past hardship and present triumph. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from a frightened, uncertain newcomer to a capable, confident young woman who had earned respect, friendship, and a place to call home. In many ways, she realized that the life she now led was richer than anything she could have imagined when she first wandered into the farm's edge. The farmer, observing her from across the yard, felt a similar sense of pride and fulfillment. He had acted out of compassion when he had first offered her shelter, but what had unfolded was far greater than he could have anticipated. He had witnessed her resilience, her determination, and her ability to transform not only herself but the very life of the farm. In her he saw strength, courage, and an unwavering spirit that had enriched his world in ways he could scarcely put into words. Their relationship, rooted in trust, patience, and shared effort, had become one of deep friendship and mutual respect. Together, they had faced the challenges of frontier life and had emerged stronger, more capable, and more connected than ever. The surrounding community had also taken notice. Neighbors who had once regarded the Apache girl with suspicion now treated her with admiration and respect. They observed the care she gave to the animals, the clever solutions she devised for farm problems, and the quiet authority she had earned through skill and consistency. Children who had once stared with curiosity or hesitated in her presence now sought her guidance and stories, eager to learn from her experiences and practical knowledge. Even the adults, initially doubtful, recognized the quiet power of her presence, the way she carried herself, the patience she demonstrated, and the kindness she extended without expectation. In time, the farm became not just a home for the two of them, but a bridge between cultures and a source of inspiration for the community. The Apache girl had also grown deeply connected to the land itself. She had learned to read the subtle signs of weather and soil, to anticipate the needs of the animals, and to adapt to the unpredictable challenges of frontier life. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced her confidence and her sense of belonging. The farm, once a place of uncertainty and fear, had become a space where she could thrive, contribute, and exercise her talents. Her past, filled with struggle and loss, had not been forgotten, but it no longer defined her. She had built a future grounded in skill, knowledge, and resilience, a future she could be proud of. The bond between the Apache girl and the farmer grew stronger with each passing day. They shared not only the labor and routines of the farm, but also quiet moments of reflection and joy. During long evenings by the fire, they would discuss their hopes, their memories, and the lessons they had learned from life and land. Sometimes they simply sat in silence, content to watch the flickering flames, finding comfort in each other's presence. Their companionship was simple yet profound, a partnership grounded not in words alone, but in shared experience, trust, and the understanding that they could rely on one another in both hardship and triumph. Throughout this time, the Apache girl continued to teach and inspire others. She shared her knowledge of nature, farming techniques, and animal care with the children and young members of the settlement. She offered guidance gently and patiently, never seeking recognition, yet earning respect simply by demonstrating skill and wisdom. Her life, once marked by isolation and struggle, had become a source of learning and inspiration for others. Through her example, she showed that courage, resilience, and kindness could overcome prejudice, fear, and hardship. Her influence spread quietly, shaping the community in subtle but meaningful ways. As the years passed, the girl reflected on the journey she had undertaken. She remembered the fear, uncertainty, and loneliness she had felt when she first arrived, and contrasted it with the sense of purpose, connection, and competence she now experienced. She understood that life was no longer a matter of mere survival. It was about growth, contribution, and the ability to face challenges with dignity and courage. The farmer, too, reflected on the change in both their lives. What had begun as an act of simple compassion had evolved into a partnership filled with shared effort, mutual respect, and quiet triumphs. Together, they had created something enduring, a life of meaning, stability, and hope. The Apache girl also came to understand the deeper value of trust and empathy. In offering her kindness, the farmer had created a safe space for her to grow, and in turn, she had learned that her own actions could foster connection and respect. She realized that strength was not merely physical endurance, but also emotional resilience, patience, and the ability to extend understanding to others. Life on the farm had taught her that true courage often lay in small acts of perseverance, careful observation, and consistent effort. These lessons became the foundation for a life that was rich in purpose and human connection. The farm itself became a testament to their efforts. Crops flourished under careful attention, the animals thrived, and the cabin was filled with warmth and light. The land, once untamed and intimidating, had become a space where human effort, care, and intelligence created harmony. Visitors who came to the farm were often struck by the sense of order, efficiency, and quiet dignity that pervaded the place. The Apache girl's presence was central to this transformation. Her hard work, skill, and insight had helped shape the farm into a place of stability and hope, demonstrating the profound impact that one determined individual could have when supported and valued. As the seasons continued to turn, the Apache girl and the farmer faced new challenges, as all frontier life did. Storms would sweep across the plains, threatening crops and livestock, and unpredictable events could disrupt even the most carefully planned routines. Yet they met each challenge with patience, resourcefulness, and cooperation. The bond they shared allowed them to face difficulties calmly and effectively, trusting each other's judgment and learning from each experience. Every challenge overcome reinforced the lessons of resilience, teamwork, and mutual reliance that had become central to their lives. The Apache girl's journey had also taught her the importance of hope and vision. She realized that even in a harsh and unpredictable world, it was possible to create a life filled with purpose, respect, and satisfaction. She had learned to value both the small everyday victories, and the larger achievements that came from careful planning, patience, and skill. Through her actions, she had transformed not only her own life, but also the farm, the community, and the way the people around her perceived possibility and strength. Looking back, the Apache girl understood the profound change she had experienced. She had arrived at the farm weary, uncertain, and dependent, carrying memories of hardship and fear. Over time, she had learned to trust, to adapt, and to contribute meaningfully. She had built competence, earned respect, and created a life in which she could thrive. Her journey was not simply one of survival. It was a story of growth, empowerment, and the power of human connection. The farmer, who had first acted out of compassion, now shared in the fulfillment of having helped shape this transformation. Together, they had forged a life that reflected the best of human resilience, cooperation, and understanding. In the final moments of the story, as the sun set in a brilliant display of oranges and purples over the vast plains, the Apache girl stood beside the farmer at the edge of the fields. The land stretched endlessly before them, a symbol of both challenges and possibilities. She felt a sense of completeness, knowing that she had faced her fears, learned new skills, built trust, and contributed meaningfully to the world around her. The farmer looked at her with admiration and quiet pride, understanding that their shared journey had brought both of them growth, companionship, and a deeper understanding of life on the frontier. Though the Wild West remained unpredictable, dangerous, and often harsh, the Apache girl now faced it with courage, confidence, and a sense of belonging she had never known. The farm had become a sanctuary, the community a space of respect and collaboration, and the relationship with the farmer a source of enduring trust and friendship. In this life, she had discovered that survival was only the beginning. True life, she realized, was about connection, contribution, and the ability to build something meaningful even in the most challenging circumstances. And so, the story of the Apache girl and the farmer came to a satisfying conclusion. It was a story not of dependence, fear, or struggle alone, but of growth, resilience, and the quiet power of human kindness and cooperation. She had found a home, a purpose, and a friendship that would endure, proving that even in the wildest and most uncertain places, hope, courage, and connection could create a life worth living.